this. They're only trying to drag you back into prison. That's right. Hear the light.
Hi, welcome to our second podcast, What Have You? Live from the car behind Goodwill. The overview.
We picked the same place. It was so
Scenic
good.
overview of the town. There was nothing good in Goodwill.
But we have
this
a
week.
name now.
Yep. What have you? Yep. This
Because
is
that's what we're going to talk about.
what do I have? What do you have? That's what we're talking
talk
about.
what
I'm
have you.
Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
We're sisters. We
Yep.
just failed to find anything of value at Goodwill. Now we're drinking coffee. Gonna talk about life.
Yes.
Becca, why don't you open with what you have been working on?
Okay, what about I say? Last time I said I was mudding, and that was way too long ago, so it's very embarrassing that the room's not done yet. But
The same room?
closer, ever closer. Yes, all the mudding's done. I just have to sand and paint. And we were putting the trim up last night, which is very exciting. It's this beautiful old sort of turn of the century.
Is it the stuff
trim.
that was in there before?
Yeah, same
You're
stuff that was
putting
in.
it back
Yes, we're putting it all back up, and I took
Is it wood or painted?
Oh, it's painted, and the windows over the summer I took out because they're the old double hung windows. Took them out. Learned
I remember
how to
this because pulling up in front of your house to see my teenage nieces standing in the second story windows, like on the porch. They were
There's a porch
chipping
roof
something
beneath.
out
It
of the
wasn't
window
like they
well or
could
something,
fall to their
right?
death. Yeah, we spent a lot of time on that window.
you were like
because
chipping stuff out of the
I
windows.
learned how to reglaze windows. I now know how to do that, and I reglazed them, and I stripped them all down and painted them.
You should open an Etsy shop. Do
Yeah,
that
no.
for other people.
No, it is not my favorite activity. But I reglazed them, and then I got them all rehung with the old weights, and so they actually work as double hung now. So the top panel will slide down, and the bottom one slides up. So I got that done, and the trim's going up. And right now I am getting. Well, I have to paint the stupid thing first, but I've been kind of gradually putting together some furniture and stuff for the girls' room when we move them back in there. So I found some really great old iron beds that I bought on Craigslist, and so I have those, and we got some great old Matelassé bedspreads, so those are ready to move in. And so now my thing is curtains. So we're kind of torn. I might just design the fabric and print.
I talked to you earlier today. There was a different plan earlier
but see,
today.
this is the thing. This is what I'm wrestling. I'm wrestling.
Because just
here's
not
the thing.
like it has to have been like what, an hour ago? I think it was an hour ago that you told me you had just settled on the vintage percale sheet patterns
There's
that you wanted.
nuances here. So I might design the fabric. I might, but see, then that's going to be stupidly expensive because then to print it and blah.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of windows. Because we opened there, it's kind of a suite. There's like 2 rooms. So there's a lot of curtain that needs to happen. And I found these fabulous old vintage sheets, which I think would be really cool because if you lined them and turned them into drapes, you wouldn't have to seam them. Like if I got full size for the big windows and then twin for the smaller ones, I think it could be really good. My girls are less convinced, though, about that particular pattern. And I was like, really? I think it could be good. I think I might order one, and then we'll hang it up and we'll look at it, which is far more organized than I normally would be. But
what about,
but
since
the
it's
thing
a vintage
is,
sheet, would they not, do you not like the idea? Well, I know you. You don't like the idea of Mod Podging them. Different prints.
Mod Podging them.
No, not Mod Podge, not decoupage curtains.
I was like, what? Turn it into tarps?
doing like different prints here
well,
and there.
I wouldn't mind, but they would have to be similar enough. But I found this great
Becca
one.
tends to abide by the school of pick your color decorating.
Yeah, no, I don't.
She chooses a color and then she abides by it.
Well,
yeah,
more than you.
much more than me. I am like I remember buying 2 purple lamps at Ross one time. I was with a friend and I went in there and I was like really moved by this purple lamp for no reason. And then it was on clearance, so it was just, it needed to be done. I was excited, 2 of them. And as I'm lugging them out through Ross, she says, well, I didn't know you had any purple in your living room.
Me or your friend?
No, my friend said this. And I said,
I don't remember this.
well, I do now. I mean, it was, now that I'm bringing home the purple lamps, I think I have
tend
it.
to kind of keep in more of a schematic about it. But the thing is
Clarity of purpose,
clarity
and color.
of purpose. But see, I found the sheet, and the thing is, my mom had it on their bed in the 70s. Like, I remember taking naps on that very sheet, and so I feel nostalgic about it, and it's totally adorable.
You should make curtains for your room out of it.
No.
Yeah, now you
It's
know
the
how your
wrong
girls feel.
Anyway, and I also I went down the wormhole of YouTube videos. Learning how to make a hand-sewn double-lined drape from this woman.
You told me about this English woman who does drapes
and
for life.
It really moved me. It was so beautiful. It's like these gorgeous drapes that are double-lined.
That is indeed a deep wormhole of the internet.
Oh man, and it was so bad. I kept watching more because I was like, I'm gonna have to, at some point in my life, I'm gonna have to make drapes like that, and it's just gonna
train now a little bit every.
This might be it. I might get it out of my system, and then I'll be done forever with making them. This lady though with the double line drapes, she just has like hours of footage of her standing in a dark room stitching by hand, and it's strangely fascinating.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I can see that.
I like seeing people who are really
go
good at what they do.
In a wormhole of the internet myself, it's usually in very like, let's research all of the different ways that people used to prep fleeces.
Oh yeah,
for
you get
spinning
into
and
fiber.
weaving.
You get into fibers.
But for whatever reason, it's just long been a fascination with me.
Yeah, well, see, I have 2 whole books on just linen, so I think
but in different places in the world, different areas, that all these different people groups faced the same problem of, how can I take what the sheep has and wear it myself? Like, they're like, you look cozy. How can I get that off of you and onto me?
Yeah. Others.
And some of it, and one thing that I don't love it in terms of, it's not like I just want to talk about that or read about it all the time, but it is something that can really get my attention and make me feel like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. That is like the women who knit Guernsey sweaters that they worked. And they worked like by the seaside gutting fish. Like, it was not a nice job. It was not, and like, this is like working clothes that they were, and not even like working clothes that will be nice. It's working clothes that will get fish guts all over it. And they made up these elaborate cable patterns and all this different things. And most of these women were illiterate. Most of them didn't even know how to write or read, but they were making up these. And
that's pretty intensely mathematical.
It is. If you're going to do that, to know how big to make it, and then to decide you're going to repeat a pattern over all of this, and you're going to do whatever.
This brings something up, though. This is a quote that I actually tried to track down to its source, and I couldn't find it. So it may be one of these mythical quotes. But it's cited in a lot of different places. But a pioneer woman who was coming across, in the wagon train or whatever.
Yeah, but no, wasn't she at her? Well, maybe.
But she came across, out west. Hard times. Life was hard, and she said something about her quilts, and she said, "I make my quilts sturdy to keep my family warm, and I make them beautiful to keep my heart from breaking," which just sums it up.
My kids have this. My kids. That's such a good quote because we've never lived a life that would need beauty like that. Like, we've never, like, we like it and we're drawn to beauty, and you want to do it, but you don't realize how desperate you would be for something like that. Like, because what it was those kinds of efforts was like the creative energy that drove a culture forward. Yeah. Like, that was like, we will make this beautiful. We will make this lovely and an inheritance, and we will do this.
I think it's a kind of a version of what Schaefer talks about, the mannishness of man keeps coming out. Even in the hardest settings, there's this, in men, I'm sure it shows up slightly differently, but in women, we are geared towards making things beautiful. Like, that is what we do.
Men do that. Men do the same thing, just usually different fields. But do you remember that John Gould? He has that hilarious story. It's like probably wrote in the 40s about being a farmer in Maine.
It's a great book.
And he's talking about
Farmer Takes a Wife.
Yeah, but this isn't a different one. I think it's in either hay nor grass or something. And there's a part where he's talking about when all your work on the farm is kind of done and you're pretty caught up on things and you're like kind of, it's not quite time to be planting, but it's not quite. It was like this weird moment.
Sort of February-ish.
Yeah, and he tells this story about how that's when you just might find yourself in the barn making an intricately inlaid rose on your saw handle. and he has, it's really funny when he talks about the awkwardness of if someone stops by at that time. It's like you owe anyone an explanation for why you wanted a rose inlaid on your saw handle, but you're like,
well, I was kind of an
I was kind of something I needed to do right now.
Thought I'd beautify my
and
tool.
of course, he was well before what we would consider leisure time.
Yeah,
like before that. It was not a hobby.
That's the thing. Like these women, knitting or making quilts or whatever. There's necessity involved in it, but I think the humanness where the image of God comes out is that need to be creative.
The little C creators, the need to make something and do something. And I had years and years ago, and when I was in high school, I had a sudden panic attack that I didn't know how to do anything.
I remember this year.
Yeah, well, Becca's 4 years older than me, and it was a little bit different for us how life was at the time. I had more friends, and by the time I came, because the school was bigger.
Was popular.
Yeah, that's not what I meant. And by the time
school was bigger,
the school was bigger, and also by the time I was in high school, there was a basketball team and a track team and volleyball. So I was doing that, and Becca, unfortunately, pioneered her way through before that.
Speaking of pioneers,
yeah, back to another kind of creative energy. So Becca got into more creative things before I did, and so she would try to talk me into going to the fabric store with her, and I remember just rolling my eyes extensively about, no, why would I go to Joann's? I hate Joann's.
Sometimes I'd rope her into it. Like I remember when I was experimenting with making batik, I got you involved.
You got me in that. We were deep in it. Our poor mother coming home from somewhere to find us having melted several boxes of paraffin wax.
And we were painting
were we trying to tint it with crayons? Oh yeah, and I made the weirdest pastel batik known to man.
Not good. The whole project.
And then I
good.
sewed it into a throw pillow from my bed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did. I lived with that for a long time. Batik.
I just felt like, I can dust my hands off and say I've tried batik.
We did it.
Anyway,
I remember trying to clean it out of the drain. It was
not
bad
good.
times.
No.
So, anyways, Becca got into that. But sometime in high school, I had a sudden panic attack that I was like, we have all these things that like our great grandma made, and then our grandma made, and then mom made stuff, and I'm like, but what did I ever do? I was apparently at an early
sort
crisis.
Of an existential crisis.
It was. Well, and then at the time, and this makes me sound and feel very old, but it was before the internet.
Mm-hmm.
It was before there was an internet.
Know. See, like, I was wondering this the other day because I went through it roughly the same time. I went through a phase of I ought to know how to make stained glass. I should learn.
How could we find out?
But I don't know how I did find out because I did.
I do. We went to that place.
I did.
You got a book. You got a book from the library.
Did I go to the library? I don't know.
Probably.
But I read about it, and then I bought.
You read about it, and then we went to that
it.
place in
and
Spokane
I whipped up
and got a stained glass.
Learned how to cut some glass,
but
and
guys,
solder the lead.
She didn't stick with that. Her new windows that she reglazed are not stained.
No,
they are
not
regular.
stained.
Just regular.
But I am not. I'm not going to promise that it won't ever come back. I might want to sometime.
My fear at the time in high school that I still stand by, we would go to Joann's and all I would see was horrible ideas.
Polar fleece.
Well,
terrible.
No, I think it was before the real craze of polar fleece. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But
I don't know.
We
really
would go and it would be like,
everywhere.
But you'd see it was before handmade was cool again. It was like there was just this whole lineup of like books on the shelf of making doll toilet paper covers and like plastic canvas bookmarks and how to do, and I would get so cranked off at the whole situation. Years. Yeah, and I think I felt like constrained by it. Like,
but
I have
think
to do
you
this.
And I have always shared a sort of antipathy for crafts. Like there's art. And then there's little crafts.
Yeah, but I also have a deep antipathy to calling your craft an art.
Well, right.
So
but
it's
see,
difficult.
That's because we don't like the craft. Like, well, it's not.
No.
We're gonna have to be more precise here.
Yeah,
but
you're getting into deep
toilet
waters.
paper holder covers. That's just not needed.
That's just
Nobody needs it.
Well, but this is what I was gonna say is that when I had this little panic attack, I was like, I need to learn how to do things.
But you turn to art, is what I'm saying. The actual legitimate domestic arts, which is very
Yes.
different than time killer crafts.
Right. I think I had been stuck thinking it was like rag dolls to hang on your kitchen wall.
Right.
Or nothing.
Right.
That was what you could do.
Or the times when people were gluing like Spanish moss onto little toll painted wooden cutouts.
Oh, I probably would have been all over that at that time.
Well,
no, not quite. A little earlier I was probably. Anyways, I decided at that time, I was like, wait, how free would it be? Like, I would love to know how to do everything so that I could make what I wanted. Not I was in the mood to make something, so I had to go find something that was a plastic canvas craft.
Right.
Like, I wanted to be able to say, well, I want a quilt, I'll make a quilt. Or I want this
what I mean.
item, I'm going to make this item. And I knew
time killer crafts that is different than
right. And I recognized all of the sudden at that moment that I needed to learn a lot of things in order to have that freedom. And I remember not very long after that, I was in a knitting store and I signed up to take a class on tatting. Because I was like, tatting? I don't even know that. I was at this phase of life where I was,
quick, learn
like
to
I
tat.
said, it was a crisis. It was really like, I was like, who even thought of heart hanger embroidery? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do
And you were
tatting.
also doing like paper piecing on quilts, and I was signing up for tailoring
I
seminars.
started a hexagon paper pieced quilt.
Which was
That's
beautiful.
true.
It was beautiful.
And then, I had that, but a lady in our church saw my name signed up on the sheet there and called me and said, my neighbor knows how to tat and would like to teach you. And I was like, great, I'm coming over. I was like, I don't know, I was like 18 or something. And it felt like I had gone to visit the tatting oracle because I go in and it was this woman named Gladys. She was like 99 and she was not a little bit of a tatting expert. She was a deep tatting expert.
Tatting it up.
And she had tatted herself she had tatted tablecloths or a tablecloth.
Whoa.
At least one sunbonnet had been tatted.
Did she starch it?
Yeah, and the thing that was so cute is she was still feeling hot about that sunbonnet because she was like, my sister and I made these. And you could just tell she felt like she had taken the town by storm in that tatted sunbonnet. And she was still on a high from it. She was still loving it.
She probably drew a lot of whistles that day.
Yeah, she must have. So she taught me, or tried to teach me, and the lady in our church, Katie Hurt, and very sweetly taught me the rest. And I remember specifically it took me far too long to understand why my knots were not slipping. Way too long. But when I got it, and we pressed on. And then I tatted a couple things. And now that's in the deep bank of, if I run into something that has to be tatted.
If you need to tat.
If I have to.
If I need to solder some lead on a piece of glass.
Yeah.
We can.
But I did get into, after having kids, knitting was the one that really stuck with me the most in terms of an ongoing, a thing that I've continued to do pretty constantly.
Yeah. Well, we've all had our phases of random experimental.
Well, you did a quilt. You were doing quilts more.
Oh, yeah,
at
I did
time.
quilts. Yeah, I did.
And I whipped off with a quilt with like zero thought. I was like, time to quilt. And so we went to Joann's and I just stacked up some fabric, bought it, and whizzed through a pinwheel, a basic pinwheel quilt.
I just remember I made some quilts. I made a few, but then I felt like I had to hand quilt them. Otherwise, it's not really it. It's
I haven't truly done it.
It wouldn't be the cowboy way.
It won't be.
So I don't know if I ever finished a quilt.
It's a marvel.
Anyway.
No, you did. You finished. You had that red and blue and cream baby one.
Oh gosh, I forgot.
Where did that go? It was cute. Where did it go?
I gave it to somebody. Anyway, so off the topic of random things we've done. Where is that quilt? throw that out to the world.
Well, I'll tell you where mine is. My
so-
pinwheel quilt later on, because Becca taught me that the only cowboy way was to hand quilt it.
I believed it.
In the fever of an afternoon, I had this pinwheel quilt on my bed, just being a casual, not amazing quilt. And then one day I just clamped a quilting hoop right in the dead middle of it and hand quilted it up, and it didn't make a plan, didn't nothing, just was like maybe another line coming this way and another
sounds
star.
like one of your daughters. I could picture
It so is.
thing.
I have 4 people who are
maybe
exactly,
2 of your daughters.
Exactly this level. Anyways, I quilted it all the way to the outer border and then was sick of it. But I ended up cutting that off, and it is still folded up in my yarn room with a no border on it, no binding. Second thing I need to do, and I think one block.
Upholster a seat cushion in it.
It's big enough to be bigger than that. I mean,
anyway, so talk about something else. Things you've been thinking about that aren't related to
or crafts. I don't know. It's all my crafts. That's all I can think about.
That we love. No, stuff we've been, I don't know, thinking about, talking about spiritual things.
Something out of this plane.
So, well, between us, we've got a lot of girls.
Yeah.
I've got 3.
And I've got
You've
4.
got 4.
Yeah.
So
our oldest is, how old's your oldest daughter?
So we have 16, 15, and turning 14 this week.
Nice.
So
Teenagers.
basically 14, 15, 16, which is a total blast and so much fun. And then you've got the younger version of
12, 10, 9, and almost 7.
Yeah. So anyway,
well, almost
lots
11
of girls.
actually. 12, almost 11.
So thinking about like raising girls, something that is super important to teach them early on. This is what we were talking about earlier, emotional control.
Oh, emotional control.
Emotional control. So like when...
Well, we were thinking about how that a lot of people think of the verse about like a man without self-control is like a city with its walls broken down.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, they think of self-control as being things like don't eat that cookie, or can you discipline your body? Like, can you run harder than you think you could?
How many sit-ups can you do?
But they don't think of self-control as being controlling your emotions, because your emotions, a lot of people treat like it's just the tide and there's really nothing you could do about it. You couldn't possibly
the whirlpool.
Right. Yeah. And they're like, you just have to wait for it to ebb back out.
Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad.
Or one of my daughters is just in a funk.
Right.
Well, do we just have to ride that out, or is there a way that you can actually say, you know, this is not...
Yeah. So when our oldest daughter was really little, she came right after our son and was a completely different creature. He was actually had a ridiculous self-control as a child. That was almost the opposite problem with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was totally different. And I remember, though, we ended up treating some of the things, we treated it the same. And I think some people tend to think, well, she's a girl, she cries, because girls cry because that's what they do. And obviously, of course, it's fine to cry sometimes, but she would fall apart crying. When Knox was a wee tot, like I'm talking about like 2, when he was about 2, if he decided to throw a fit, you could tell that he sat there and he weighed the pros and cons and he thought, yes, I think the best approach right now.
I think what I should do.
I shall throw a fit. Here we go. And then he would do it, and it was the most hilarious thing ever because it was very calculated. And Jemima was just, you know, a little girl, and she would just cry or, you know, be sad about stuff. But something that we had done with Knox early on is make him blow it out. If he fell down and skinned his knee and was crying, I'd be like, okay, now it's time to be done. You need to blow it out. Take a deep breath. Time to be done. And so it's like just learning to tell yourself, okay, I can stop crying now, which obviously we let them cry when something happened. But then there's this point where you sort of cross over, and now you're just sort of...
We called that the difference between losing the bubble and throwing the bubble. We were like, you've lost the bubble it's late. It's kind of like having an accident.
Yeah.
It's like
you fell apart.
Things, you didn't get to the bathroom in time, you're tired, you didn't eat, something is wrong, and you've now lost the bubble and you're emotionally a mess. But then there is do not feel like staying in fellowship.
Yeah, right. So
I shall be done.
Throw the bubble. Yeah. And so the thing is, we would do that with Jemima too. Like, okay, you've cried. Now it's time to be done. And that's a really important skill. And I think that it's something that a lot of grown women would do well to learn that skill.
Yeah,
and I think it serves the girls really well when it's like, I'm not going to just let my emotions gallop away with me wherever they may head.
Totally.
Because emotions are not to be trusted, as we all know. They take us...
Yeah, and actually, but they're not feared either. The point is that they should be mastered. Because it's like,
they're good servants and horrible masters.
Yes, and it's like, well, it's fine to feel something or to struggle with something, and then so long as you're not losing control to it. Like that now my feeling is making me sin against everyone.
Because I think that our culture treats it as if, well, if I feel it, then it is automatically
there's nothing
valid.
To do about it.
Right. It is valid because I feel this way. Rather than saying, I need to stop feeling this way. It's time to be done feeling this way.
Well, one thing I think is really helpful that we try to do, that I try to do with myself, that we try to do with our girls, and boys, actually, it's not really that girl specific, is just... you can't think something is if you're having a bad emotion, that the right state is actually, it's not a vacuum. It's not like you should be just taking this out. It needs to actually be displaced by something stronger than that. It needs to be like, it's like, okay, so I'm having all these emotions of self-pity, and it's not stop self-pitying. It's like positively be thankful. Like put it like positively replace.
Turn and thank God.
Yes. Like, stop, drop and think about, what you have to be thankful for.
Yeah.
And so like, we'll do that with our little, I just was doing that with Shad, our youngest, where it's like having a hard time and you're like, oh, so sorry that you don't have any feet.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have feet. It's like, I'm sorry nobody loves you.
There's
he's
something
like,
you could thank
he's like,
God
what? Everybody loves me. I'm like, who do you need to thank for that?
Like, seriously, having really worked when the girls were really little, like all in the preschool years, of like, okay, now it's time to be done. You need to blow it out. You need to, whatever. It is so wonderful to live in a house with 3 teenage girls, and it is drama free. It really is. And they are all fabulous. And nobody's like, it's not like anybody's repressed or anything. It's just being able to control it is a huge...
But we should make it clear that when you say they're just bad masters, we're not afraid of it. So one of the things that we never want to encourage is stuff it.
No.
Like it needs to actively be processed.
Yes.
Like, and this is the difference for a lot of people when someone's emotions blow up everywhere. It's like a pressure cooker blew its lid off. And then they try to deal with it by putting the lid back on, but leaving it still on the heat, on the stove. And the reality is that what we want to be doing is dealing with what is causing this kind of buildup.
Right.
And instead, it's not like just keeping them... it was that one of the elders in our church had that great illustration once about some kind of sin that he said it was just like trying to sit on a beach ball in the pool. Yeah. And it was like, it's like no one will notice necessarily from the top for a while, but when it comes out, it really comes out. And it's like that's not what we're recommending, is hide your bad attitude until it launches to such a level.
It means actually having emotions,
not processing
them, but also just being able to steer them where they need to go. Because sometimes, God gave us emotions. It's not like it's something that we're supposed to get rid of. It's just not being overborne by your emotions.
Right. And my grandpa, mine, only mine, my sister here, Grandpa Jim was telling one of our nephews, Rory, probably Knox too when he was there, that every conversation you have about the gospel, or really about anything with anyone, needs to start with you making a decision that you like them. He said you need to actually make a decision that I like this person. And he's saying that it immediately is visible to them. Yeah. It's immediately communicated that you have love in your heart for this person. Right. But that's an example of needing to discipline your emotions. Right. You need to be able to do that. You need to be able to say, this is my child who I love. And I love them. And that's where my emotions are. Like, this is where my emotions will be. Even if my child is currently being a major hottentot.
The fact is, the Bible's full of commands to have an emotional, some kind of an emotional response to something. Rejoice when you meet various trials. Love your husbands and children. And so if we just have a free pass of like, well, I don't feel that way right now, then it means that basically, well, what are you going to do about that command then? Because
because that's a command. It's not a...
Yeah, and the command presupposes that, so that must be something I can decide to do.
Well, there must be obedience. There
Right.
must be a method for
Right.
obedience.
So
Is it time for us to move on?
So
We're getting too carried away.
last thing, we need to leave off here with a recommend of some sort.
Oh, hot tip.
Yeah.
Okay, you do yours first.
Oh man.
What's
I
your
don't know.
recommend? Are we talking?
What are we talking about? Recommend what? What are we trying to
I
recommend?
don't know, guys. People,
Rach,
listeners, what are we recommending?
What's your favorite cookbook? What's a good
Oh man, I don't
cookbook?
think I have a favorite cookbook, but I do have, I think the most reliable recipes I always recommend Ina Garten, because
Well, hers are just good.
she's just good. She's just like, if you think you will like the recipe, you will like it. If you think, and let you know, I'm not saying if you hate chicken, make her chicken recipes, but I'm saying that she's excellent and really reliable.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have her
you don't
cookbooks.
have a favorite cookbook?
It kind of depends on what it's for, because I have Ina Garten, I think is just like old reliable, great stuff. I love the new best recipe, the Cooks Illustrated collection, for a few things, for some
Cooks
stuff.
Illustrated is
They're just
pretty
also
good.
reliable. You feel like it's cooking school in a box.
Yeah.
And then I guess it just kind of depends on what it is that I was, I have like a favorite Asian cookbook, and I have a favorite, I have more favorite cookbooks. I use the app, the New York Times recipe section has an app, and that's fun because it's like a little bit more,
that's
you
handy.
can flag things, like that.
Yeah.
How about you? What's your favorite cookbook?
So I'm kind of the same. I have a lot of cookbooks, and a lot of them have good stuff, but there's not like the one that I always use.
What's your one, like, pretend that you didn't make Great Grandma Hoagie's pie crust recipe? What is the one that you would go to for like a biscuit recipe or pie crust, or like the most basic?
I have like that enormous, is it the Joy of
cooking?
Baking?
No,
baking. Okay. I'm getting it wrong. No, it's like a huge cookbook, and it's just baking. And so that one has got great stuff in it. And
is it a Joy of Baking?
that's what I'm starting to wonder if that's actually what it is. But it's a great big fat
I
one.
like the Better, because we grew up with Mom, always had the Better Homes and Gardens
I
basic
send my
cookbook.
girls to that one sometimes when they just want, like, I want to make a random whatever.
Yeah. There's really like 3 recipes in those that I consistently make. The ginger snaps, and I use the pie crust in that. After going on a journey of more elaborate pie crusts and realizing that I think pie crust channel anxiety. The more you're worried about will it be flaky?
No.
I don't know. Then you can create magic of tough pie crusts just with your anxiety. And
It's
I
like
ended up
gravy.
after a long journey
Don't you
of,
think it's like gravy? Like you have to casually approach gravy.
No, it knows when you're worried. And if you're not worried, it will be great.
A gluey lump.
Yeah.
If you don't.
And when I did with pie crust, I went on this big thing of I think I was making them with vodka so it would evaporate. So there was all of this.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like Williams Sonoma recipes for things that had to chill for exact moments and things. And then I just settled back on Better Homes. It's like, this is just
really? Do you use Better Homes? I don't like that pie crust.
Well, do you ever eat my pie?
Good point. I'm not going to insult
what
your pie.
are you about to say?
I don't like making it because it's more fiddly. The one I do is the best. It really is. I'm sorry.
Well, yours is.
It's my
I even know it.
Grandma's great aunt's recipe. It's a very
Better Homes, though. I'd like to come back to this. Is not fiddly. After a journey of fiddly pie crust.
No. I just mean the crust. Not the process is fiddly. The crust itself tears easily.
No, it doesn't. Mine doesn't.
Really?
No, but I do remember you telling me Great
does.
Grandma Hoagie's recipe, which is
it's
you
amazing.
take however much flour.
You take as much flour as you need.
You take that.
I had to codify it.
Half that of fat.
Yeah.
And half that of water. And then the things that are not mentioned is salt, how long it chills.
She also not
put it
chills.
in the garage.
She said literally, you have to let it set That's the most important part. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to write this down. Can you tell me, like, set? What do you mean set? She's like, well, sometimes I let it set in the garage overnight. Sometimes I let it set in the fridge. It just depends. Other times I just let it set on the counter. She really had a magical intuition.
Let
she
it
was like,
set. You and your pie crust know
Yeah.
each other well
Yeah.
enough that you know when it needs some garage distance and when it needs some
she's
counter
true.
distance.
It's actually, she's like Gladys the
Do
Tatty
you weigh
Maestro.
it? Yeah, she is.
I don't weigh it. No, I don't weigh my baking.
So
Anyway, we're talking too much. It's time to go. It's time to be done.
Until next time, that's
Yeah.
what we have. What have you?
Jesus Christ, King of love. That's right.